This is the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live, where we offer the news, information, traffic, weather, sports, and entertainment our commercial drivers want and need. I'm your host, Shelley Johnson. Many people know of a loved one or a friend who's developed dementia. It's in the news a lot, and it seems to be on the rise. Many people are concerned about developing the condition that robs them of their memory and their life. There is a way to reduce your risk for dementia. Pharmacist and functional nutritionist Susan Gibson has won multiple awards for her work helping people regain their lives and confidence through improved memory and brain health. She became motivated when she saw her mother's devastating decline into dementia. That gave her the motivation to earn her pharmacy degree, Harvard MBA, functional nutrition certification, and 30 years of experience developing new healthcare products to provide education and supplements that have helped many patients lead full lives with clarity of mind for years to come. She's the formulator of Vivalor memory support for brain health. We have Susan with us today to talk about how people can reduce their risk for dementia. Welcome, Susan. Thank you for being on the show with us.
Thank you so much, Shelley. It's great to be with you. And I love all your truckers who are doing a wonderful service for all of us. So good to be here.
They like that appreciation because so often they're forgotten. People forget that whatever you have came by truck.
Oh, well, we're getting reminded of that lately with shortages of things, how indispensable they are. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Before we talk about how to reduce the risk for dementia, how about we define what it is and is it hereditary?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Dementia is a decline in cognitive function. There actually are not good markers or diagnostic tools yet for identifying dementia. So it is primarily diagnosed based on the cognitive decline itself and the performance of the individual. There are they can do PET scans and MRIs and some imaging to look at the brain, but there's not a great correlation between what they see in the MRIs and imaging and the cognitive performance. So most of the time, it's just based on the actual level of memory loss. And this is a continuum. So it starts out as memory loss and losing your keys and forgetting names and simple things, which many people will say, well, that's normal aspects of aging. But it's not normal, it's common, but it's not required. The difference in diagnosing someone as having dementia means that the level of memory loss and cognitive degeneration has gotten to the point that the person cannot do what they call activities of daily living. So they can't take care of themselves anymore. Right. And that's the point at which it would be diagnosed as dementia. Although I've heard many physicians say that they try not to diagnose dementia because they don't really feel like they have a lot that they can do. So they feel like it's kind of a hopeless diagnosis. So this whole area is very under addressed currently, and there's lots of misunderstandings as well.
It is amazing what they don't know about the human brain. I will hear people say, well, dementia, it's hereditary, it runs in my family, can't do anything about it, and it just comes with getting older, which I don't believe.
You're right. You shouldn't believe that. There are genetic components, absolutely. There's what they call the ApoE4 gene, and you can
what gene is that? I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you. What gene is that?
ApoE4. So it's apolipoprotein E4.
Okay.
And you can inherit one from your mom and one from your dad. So you can either have one, what they call allele, or two ApoE4s. And the ApoE4 is the risk gene for dementia. If you have one of those, you are 4 times as likely to get dementia at some point as if you don't have any. And if you have 2 of them, depending on the data, you're 8 to 12 times more likely to get it. But it is not a determinant. It does not mean you will get it. It is a risk factor. And so I have a higher risk with a family history. I'm actually 5 times more likely to get dementia than someone that doesn't have a family history because my mother had it. But memory loss and dementia are primarily lifestyle diseases. More of the dementia is accounted for by lifestyle than is accounted for by your genetics. The thing that the genetics should indicate to you is that it should be a real priority to take care of your brain health. Only about 30% of the cases of dementia are accounted for by the genetics. And in those who do have the risk, they have the risk genes, changing your lifestyle has an even greater impact than it does in those that don't have those risk genes. So the bottom line, we haven't been taught this very much or heard about it, although this has been known for quite a while. The things that we're doing on a daily basis make a huge difference in how well our brain is working and the likelihood of our brain continuing to function well as we age.
Now, I've heard dementia confused with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's, you hear a lot about. Those are 2 separate conditions, aren't they?
Well, there's a big overlap. So dementia is kind of the big bucket category. And there's different things that can cause the dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's is by far the largest of the types of dementia. So 70% of those who have dementia have Alzheimer's disease. So in those cases, the term dementia and Alzheimer's, they're sometimes used pretty interchangeably because they apply in both of those. And there's actually a bit of an overlap here. Another possible cause is vascular dementia. You were mentioning before even your mother's situation. So if you have strokes or high blood pressure or things that are going on with your blood vessels, of course, your brain is an organ, it's connected to the rest of your body. What
Yep.
you do for your rest of the body impacts your brain. These
Mm-hmm.
vascular issues can also precipitate a type of dementia.
Yep.
There's a type that's associated with Parkinson's disease. There's
Right.
frontotemporal. So there's some based on the area of your brain that's impacted. So the term dementia is a little bit broader term, but Alzheimer's is what they typically use for age-related memory loss.
Yeah.
But they're finding there's a lot of overlap between these. Like many people who have Alzheimer's have a vascular component
Mm-hmm.
that so it's not like they're exclusively one or the other.
In terms of my mom, when we were off the air, I was talking about the fact that she had gotten encephalitis, which caused a brain trauma, which
Yeah.
then led to dementia because she was having what's called TIAs, transient ischemic attacks. And of course, at the time, there wasn't a lot of information that was available to us as a family. It was certainly what she was left with. The fact she survived, the doctors were just amazed. And they had little information on how to help her rehabilitate. And she had issues with aphasia, various other things. And it was a tremendous challenge. And there were days when she was like herself and days where she was not. And it seemed to be like an accelerated process after a period of time. After a
Yes.
number of years, we could see more dementia activity. And of course, we had
Yes.
people coming in to help with her because you didn't know if she was going to try to cook and leave the stove on.
Yeah.
We caught her trying to file her nails with a steak knife, just
Oh.
weird stuff like that. So, yeah. And she was nothing like that prior to that. So
Right.
I don't believe that that was something that was an hereditary thing. It was from a brain trauma.
Yes, and that's very common.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very sorry about your mom,
Oh,
but
thank you.
my mother, when she had just modest memory loss, couldn't be left alone. Same thing. It's This is one of the reasons I have such a passion for educating on the topic, because I mean, you do not want to get memory loss, and it's harder to take care of someone with moderate to advanced memory loss than it is to take care of a baby, because they're
Oh,
a threat to themselves,
yep,
they're a threat to others.
yep.
You can't leave them alone for a
Nope.
second, and they create chaos. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
never know where things are located. It's it's very difficult to manage, and it's humiliating. I mean, my mom was so lovely. I mean, she was my best friend, and she was so warm and charming, and your personality changes, everything changes, and none of us want that, and we don't have to have it. So that's all the more reason to start now with taking
I
care of our brains.
I have heard the term hardening of the arteries. I
Mhm.
think that used to be one of the descriptions. Would that be more the vascular dementia?
Well, that's usually used to describe atherosclerosis,
Mm-hmm.
or, yeah, the plaques in the arteries and the arteries stiffening.
Mm-hmm.
That can impact the brain. Usually people are talking about that all over the body. But one of the important things about the brain, it's only 2% of our total body weight, but it uses over 20% of our nutrients. So anything, and it's the control center for everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that are impacting the rest of your body are impacting your brain as well.
Right?
And so, yes, those vascular changes are impacting the blood vessels in your brain as well, and
Mm-hmm.
can be a precipitating factor in memory loss and eventually dementia.
I've heard statins are not a good thing. Have you heard that as well?
Oh, yes. So there's very mixed data here,
Mm-hmm.
but because of the number of complaints about memory loss and fuzzy thinking, there are now the package insert, which is the official data on the statins. The FDA has required them all to list three different aspects of memory loss as common adverse events in their official documentation. So we do see some issues. Uh, on the other side of the argument, there have been analysis, big meta studies where they've looked at all the data
Mm-hmm.
and said that they don't see any increases in those meta analyses. But I have heard many people complaining about it, and I think that um, the fact that it's listed now as adverse events in their official documentation is some pretty good evidence that there can be issues there. Yes.
That's good. And I don't think as many doctors are prescribing statins. It seemed like they were handing those medications out like candy just to fight bad cholesterol.
It depends on who you talk to and where they are on this perspective. Over the years, they have lowered the target blood pressure. And so the doctors were prescribing statins more and more and more. Um, so you really, you don't want to get your levels down as low as they can be, but that's kind of, so it depends on which physician you talk to and
Hmm.
what they subscribe to in terms of the data.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
And the statins lower the LDL, correct?
Well, so you have the good cholesterol and the bad cholesterol, and you actually need cholesterol. It's
Yeah.
hugely important for your brain,
Yeah.
and it is the substrate that they use to make our hormones. So this is one of the reasons that getting your cholesterol levels down really low is not a great idea.
Hmm.
Um, So again, it depends on the physicians you talk to and where they are on this. And this is a little bit of a difference between the natural medicine viewpoint and the traditional medicine viewpoints,
Right. Yep.
of which I've been trained in both.
Mm-hmm.
But there are many natural ways to get your cholesterol down that are much more beneficial and don't have side effects and don't risk impacting your memory.
Which is so much better.
Yes.
And it does seem like there has been a huge increase in dementia and conditions like Alzheimer's. We hear about it all the time. And you were saying it's coming on at a younger age, which that's a major concern.
Well, yes, they are seeing some of that. So they consider it early onset dementia if you're diagnosed before age 65.
Mm-hmm.
And they are finding more and more cases of early onset. That and the aging of the population, the numbers of people with dementia and Alzheimer's is expected to triple by 2050. And in fact, this is another reason that I have a passion for this. I'm the tail end of the baby boomers. And when we watched our mothers not be able to be left alone, what happens when all of us are elderly? I don't even know where they're going to find enough people to take care of all of us. So, but memory loss and dementia, there are many things that you can do to help prevent them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really have an interest in creating a movement to have people take care of their brains so that this isn't an issue. And ideally, you want to start early.
Mm-hmm.
The pathology that leads to memory loss starts 10 to 40 years before your first memory loss symptom. So if you're noticing some ways that your brain isn't quite as sharp as it used to be, then you're already really far progressed in the brain changes. So that should be this big red flag. Oh my gosh, take action, take action. You don't want to wait, but most people do nothing when they first notice changes. Even after they're starting to have significant memory loss, they don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you really don't want to wait until you have dementia and Alzheimer's. There's things that help even at that point in time. And we're really in a new era right now because there now are prospective studies where they took people who had dementia or pre-dementia, substantive memory loss, and applied a number of lifestyle changes and supplements. And people are actually going back to jobs and productive lives, and they're seeing significant improvement. And much of the traditional medical community will still say, well, that's impossible. But we now have hundreds and hundreds of cases of this. So the documentation showing that this is possible is just increasing over time. They've known aspects of this. The Lancet Commission has published for over a decade a handful of risk factors.
Mm-hmm.
And they say up to 50% of dementia could be eliminated if these risk factors were addressed. So,
Okay.
and then they keep publishing every few years. They look at adding additional risk factors. So we've known for a while that's only one aspect of what you can do is address those risk factors. But there's a lot of things you can do.
What I would like to do in our next segment is talk about that, because certainly people want to learn more if there's a way to avoid this sort of condition. That is just a lifesaver for families, for people who could potentially have this condition, and they can maintain their independence. And that's so very important. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson, and I'm talking with pharmacist and functional nutritionist Susan Gibson. We're talking about dementia and ways that you can lower your risk for that condition. This is very, very encouraging. Stay tuned for more right here on TNCRadio.live. The trucking industry keeps America running thanks to the 3.36 million professional truck drivers who deliver everyday goods to 80% of American communities who rely on trucking for that last mile. The industry represents a diverse group with nearly half of drivers at 42% as minorities. Trucking Moves America Forward, or TNAF, educates the public on the essentiality of trucking by telling the story of trucking and its positive impact on our economy, communities, and lives. Learn how you can join the industry movement by visiting truckingmovesamerica.com. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson, and I'm talking with pharmacist and functional nutritionist Susan Gibson. We're talking about dementia and how you can lower the risks for this devastating condition. That's kind of where we left off in our last segment, Susan. What are some of the things people can do to lower or eliminate the risk for dementia?
Yes. So one of the things is moving more. So there's all kinds of studies showing that physical activity and exercise are fantastic for the brain. It's probably the most powerful thing you can do because physical activity brings blood and oxygen to the brain. There's actually studies showing that it helps you to grow new neurons and even increases the size of your brain. And this doesn't mean that you have to be a marathon runner. Anything that you can do to increase your amount of activity is helpful. So there was one study that showed that a 30-minute brisk walk 3 times a week or more reduced dementia 46% versus those who weren't doing that. So that's cutting your risk in half. And 30-minute walks, that's very doable.
Mm-hmm.
Another study broke participants into the amount of exercise they do, and they almost always see that the more exercise and the more frequently you do it and the longer you do it, the more it reduces dementia. But even a group that did 10-minute walks had a 10% reduction in dementia versus those that weren't doing the walks. So every little bit helps. And as we know, it isn't just your brain that you're helping. Your brain's connected to all the rest of your body. It helps your mood and your energy and your attention and reduces anxiety. So it's got a lot of benefits. So moving more is one thing you can do. Avoiding sugar is another key thing. Most people don't know that sugar is essentially toxic to your brain. It damages the neurons and causes inflammation in the brain. And it's so highly addictive. So if you have some sugar, then your blood sugar levels rise when you eat it, and then they drop later. So you're constantly in this cycle. And when your blood sugar levels drop, then you're hungry and you tend to want more sugary junk food. So you get into the cycle. They actually did animal studies, addiction studies, and the animals preferred sugar to cocaine. So
Wow.
it's more addictive than cocaine in some of the studies. So really,
Wow.
yeah. So starting to eat it is part of the problem because then you get into this cycle where you want more. And one study showed that on a high sugar diet in 1 week, there were deficits in memory. And when
one week, that's amazing.
And when they were switched to a low sugar diet, the memory issues resolved. So it was reversible. And MRI imaging studies have shown that prolonged sugar intake can actually shrink your brain.
That's not good.
No, and that's one of the things they look for to identify memory loss and dementia is your brain actually shrinks over time.
So does sugar actually cross the blood-brain barrier?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. And I think most people know that even one instance of eating sugar, I mean, you see it with kids, that it hinders attention. And there was another interesting survey where they asked people how hungry they were and compared sugar eaters to non-sugar eaters and asked them after they'd had huge meals, as well as when they hadn't eaten. And the sugar eaters were hungry and craving sugar even when they were stuffed. They just finished a big meal. So it messes up your whole hunger mechanism, and you tend to crave junk food, not good food.
Sure. And sugar is put in everything today.
It is. It is. We eat over 300 times more sugar than the average American did 300 years ago. And the US has the highest sugar consumption per person. Our lifestyle, the preservatives are usually either sugar or salt or, some long word that is the preservatives that are added. But so, yeah, they put sugar in everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, it keeps people coming back to buy more.
It does. That's right. It works from a marketing standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and it is something that when you're growing up as a child, if there's a lot of sugar, if you see that being consumed, here,
Yes.
have a cookie, I'll feel better.
Yeah.
This is a conditioned response.
It is totally. And we use it to reward kids. Yes. We create a culture that thinks that, it's addicted to sugar and that, sugar is kind of a reward. Yep.
So, what are some other ways to reduce the risk? You talked about movement, cutting down on sugar, alcohol. Alcohol
Yes,
turns to sugar, does it not, in the body?
it does.
So, is that a bad thing? Will that
Well,
increase the risk?
that's a really good question. Sugar is not a simple answer here because you're right, alcohol does contain sugar, which isn't great. But the studies have shown that if you drink a lot of alcohol, there's a very high correlation that you'll have memory loss and dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Addiction to alcohol really damages your brain. So there's no question on the higher ends of consumption, it's very damaging. What's intriguing is that the studies have shown that those who drink a little bit are at lower risk than those that are complete teetotalers. So moderate amounts of alcohol at sporadically are okay, and in those studies may even be slightly beneficial. Red wine in particular contains resveratrol, which is in the skin of the grapes, which has many cardiovascular benefits and cognitive benefits.
Yep.
So alcohol in very moderate amounts is okay, but if you get too much, it's a big problem.
Now, you can take resveratrol without drinking alcohol, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And in fact, it's in the Valor Memory Support, the supplement that I created because it has quite a bit of data on its cognitive benefits and its anti-aging benefits. So yeah, resveratrol is great.
What other nutrients are good to reduce memory loss and dementia?
Yeah, so there's a number of naturally occurring substances that have some great scientific data on their benefits. The Copa Munieri is an aquatic plant that, just to give some relative perspective on the amount of data that supports some of these, Bacopa has 289 studies, 9 studies that are placebo-controlled, randomized, double-blind studies. So that is the highest level of evidence. And having worked for pharmaceutical companies for 30 years, these are the type of studies that you have to have for FDA-approved prescription drugs. You need two of them for a prescription drug, or if you're in a small category, what they call an orphan disease, then you only need one of these. And Bacopa, for example, has 9 of these studies showing improvements in various aspects of cognition. So I just say that to give some relative perspective that there is quite a bit of data here on some of these. It's not as well controlled, it's at different doses and in different populations versus a pharmaceutical, but that's more real world in many cases. So Bacopa improves memory and processing speed. They've actually shown improvements in learning and in intelligence. So who doesn't want to have their intelligence improved, right?
That's a very good thing.
Yeah. And many people know about curcumin
Hmm.
from the turmeric root. It's a really powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, and it's been shown to improve attention and alertness and even improved accuracy on math and various tests. So again, lots of data supporting that. DHA, many people are familiar with, it's an omega-3 that's
Hmm.
in omega-3 fish oil. DHA is actually one of the largest naturally occurring things in your brain. So our brains are 60% oil or fats, and the main fat, number one, most common fat is DHA. But from age 20 on, we start losing, our levels start declining, and you can't make any more of it. You have to consume it. So this is why the CDC recommends that you eat 2 to 3 healthy fish meals per week, is because your brain cannot function without DHA. It's essential. And there's also some books showing that it gives energy and vitality and stamina. I heard one expert the other day saying 99% of people are deficient in DHA. So some studies have shown that those who had higher blood levels of DHA did better on cognitive tests than lower levels. And usually we recommend that the best thing to do is to get your supplements and vitamins from your food. Um, but there's some challenges now because much of our fish supply has mercury in it. And
That's bad for the brain.
that's very bad for the brain. And can be one of the reasons we're seeing some of these younger cases of dementia is due to toxins like mercury and mold and things like that. So getting DHA in a supplement is important, and getting enough of it is important as well. And pine bark extract is another great supplement. There's studies showing 15 different aspects of cognition that were improved using pine bark extract. So it improved short-term memory and speed of response and attention. So there's a number of products that have good data. Lion's mane mushroom, it's another one. They looked at 14 different aspects. Cognition is very broad. There's short-term memory and long-term memory and visual and math. I mean, there's 30 different domains. And all 14 domains that were tested showed improvement with lion's mane mushroom. So, so there's quite a few different natural supplements that are beneficial.
I'm also seeing ginkgo biloba listed.
Yeah, ginkgo biloba is actually approved in Europe as a treatment for cognitive decline. Um, so there is a good bit of data on ginkgo biloba as well. And we include all of these things in Vivalor memory support because it was formulated based on what had the most scientific evidence that it improved memory and cognition. And let's put the ones that have dose-related benefits in doses that are giving the most benefit. And let's use enough of them that we're using these natural, they're all generally regarded as safe by the FDA, but enough of them to actually make a difference.
Right. So is this something, taking these types of supplements, can people do that for preventive or prophylactic so that they don't develop dementia? Or is it also beneficial for those who have maybe early onset dementia?
So it's beneficial for both,
Hmm.
and some things have more evidence that they work more on a preventative basis than a helpful basis once you already have memory loss.
Hmm.
I would say that it's best to have these supplements as one of the aspects of the things that you're doing to take care of your memory. The brain is the most complicated uh, thing in all of creation, and there's experts have identified 36 different main pathways to memory loss and dementia, and you need to be addressing a lot of them. The
Hmm.
supplements help, and there's a good bit of data on these supplements, but it's best to do them in combination with the movement and avoiding sugar and taking care of the other aspects of your health as well. Um, and they can help both on the prevention side and on um, addressing the memory loss once you're already noticing problems. And as I mentioned, these studies now that are they're using numerous of these things. So it's not like it's one simple quick fix, but people that were applying these daily habits and taking supplements, they have seen people going back to work and really levels of improvement that were previously believed to not be possible.
So I'm seeing a number of physical conditions that can lead to perhaps, I guess, dementia,
Yeah,
obesity, cardiovascular disease, sleep apnea,
yeah,
diabetes, high blood pressure, insomnia, and depression. Wow.
yeah, yeah. So these are like all of the common chronic diseases. Obesity actually increased your risk of getting dementia 5 times. That's a
Wow.
lot.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, these aren't little 10% increases, 5 times. Depression, whether you have had it in the past or currently, is a 4 times increase in your risk of dementia. And cardiovascular disease, sleep apnea, diabetes, high blood pressure, those all double your risk. Um, so it's really important to address, again, the brain is an organ, it's attached to your other organs. What's going on with the other organs impacts your brain. And in terms of diabetes, they actually call Alzheimer's in the scientific literature, they refer to it as diabetes 3 or diabetes of the brain.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah. So as I was saying that the brain is a small organ, but it's using the majority of the nutrients and it's very sensitive. This is why one of the key recommendations is to avoid sugar, because when you have high blood levels of sugar on an ongoing basis, it's very damaging to your brain.
What you eat is key. So the song by Jefferson Starship, I think it was, that had the lyric "Feed your brain" was
Yes,
correct, right?
yes, yes. Well, we wouldn't expect to, in your truck engine, if you put ice cream in your truck engine, you wouldn't expect your truck engine to run very well
No.
because it's designed to run on gas or diesel or whatever. And our bodies are not designed to run on a lot of the foods that we put in them. So it's not that surprising that our engines wouldn't run well when they don't have the right fuel.
Which makes you wonder with the increase, of course, we do have people living longer, but it seems like the increase in dementia and Alzheimer's and various other memory loss conditions could be directly correlated to how we're eating. I know that
Yes.
as a population in the United States, we have a much higher obesity rate, I think, than other countries.
Yes, we do.
Hmm.
And it's relatively new in our history. If you watch movies from the 70s,
Hmm.
everyone is skinny.
Yeah.
I mean, even the men, they're very slight.
Hmm.
We've changed so much in 50 years. And a lot of it, it's our diet, it's our sedentary lifestyle. it's stress, it's not getting good sleep. The habits that we tend to have are habits that are not good for our brain and are also not good for the rest of our body.
We are what we eat, no doubt about that, and in our lifestyle, which, of course, when you're a commercial driver, sometimes that's a challenge.
It's a big
Eating
challenge.
well,
Yeah.
exercising, all of the above, and
Yes.
getting good sleep.
Yep.
Drivers really, really, really have a rigorous schedule, and they have a lot of health challenges that they have to be real mindful of.
I
So
totally agree.
this is
It's
really good information. We do have to go to break here, Susan. I want to talk more about your company and the supplements you have, because I'm sure that people want to know. And certainly, if they can prevent this horrible condition, that is so, so welcome. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson, and I'm talking with pharmacist and functional nutritionist Susan Gibson. She's educating us about dementia and how we can eliminate or prevent the risk factors for it. Stay tuned for more right here on tncradio.live. TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the Steve Summers Overnight Drive Show. TNCRadio.live is dedicated to commercial drivers. We offer the news, traffic, and weather you need, and the entertainment, sports, talk, music, and celebrity interviews you want to hear 24/7. We have original shows and trucker podcasts that feature some of your favorites, like Ice Road Alex Debogorski and America's Truckin' Sweetheart Marcia Campbell. TNCRadio.live is convenient and designed for professional drivers. The best part is we're free, and you can listen anywhere you are on the road. With just one tap, you can tune into Steve Summers and us right on your phone. Simply download our app by going to app.tncradio.live. That's app.tncradio.live. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson, and I'm talking with pharmacist and functional nutritionist Susan Gibson. She's been educating us on brain health and dementia and things we should consider. I wanted to talk a bit, Susan, about Vivalor Memory Support. That's a company you founded, am I correct?
That's correct. Yes. Because of the issues that I saw with my mother. Yeah. I mean, I'd spent 30 years in the traditional healthcare world, and we had talked about this a little bit with your experience as well, Shelley. But when I was looking for solutions as my mom was starting to have memory loss, there was just not much hope and not many solutions. And I thought, well, there has to be an answer here. And the brain is like this forgotten organ. And so I actually prayed that God would show me the solution to memory loss. And I quit my job and started doing the same thing I'd done my whole career. I went to all the medical conferences and read all the scientific literature and listened to all the experts, and um, ended up creating Vivalor Memory Support and creating programs, education on the natural things that you can do that have scientific evidence that they help improve your memory and prevent dementia.
That is marvelous. Now, I imagine you had to do a lot of research to put all of this together, but I commend you in doing so. You really were motivated to help a lot of people.
Absolutely. When you witnessed it with your mother, I witnessed it with mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we desperately need something. You don't have to lose your memory. It is optional, but most people have no idea that there's anything they can do to keep their memory. And even if you convince them that it is possible, they have no idea what to do. So there's a big gap. Um, and so that's why I created these courses. I couldn't find any place else to get this information.
Well, I know I didn't hear encouraging things after Mom encountered her encephalitis. After she had that, I heard things from doctors like, Well, your brain starts shrinking by the age of 25. It's nothing you can do about it. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, really? Um,
But
and
it does. I mean, that's shocking. It actually physically shrinks in size. Yeah, because we're losing neurons. But there's a
and
lot you can do.
yeah, but what I was told was it's just a fact of life, you know. Uh, So basically, when you become a young adult, you might as well just give it up. I mean, that was kind of the
Yeah.
message there.
Yeah, it's sad. I think because they are not the tools that the traditional medical community usually uses, the prescription drugs and the procedures, there is a level of hopelessness there that is really surprising. And even a lack of understanding of the current data, because as I mentioned, I mean, there's publications like the Lancet community that have been going on for a long time. So it's not that there's not evidence and information here. Um, but I consider this that the brain is just kind of behind diabetes in its adoption curve. And everyone understands that diabetes is a lifestyle condition,
Right?
and they have diabetes educators
Sure.
that
Yeah.
meet with the patient and teach them about the things they can do, because physicians only get less than 4 hours of nutrition in their education. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not really the focus. Physicians are more focused on either acute disease or they're focused on diagnosing and treating disease.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
so this is kind of a different specialty to learn about health and brain nutrition. And so it's an emerging area. And I think at some point they'll understand it as well as they do diabetes. But the brain is pretty complicated.
It
And
is.
one of the reasons that there aren't more solutions.
It's amazing what we still don't know in the medical community about the brain. And of
Yeah,
course, how we don't treat things holistically, which we need to do. It's a
yeah,
symbiotic relationship between the brain and the rest of the body and vice
yeah,
versa. Where do
yeah.
people find, how do you spell your company's name? First of all, your supplements.
Yes, it's Vivolor. V as in Victor, V as in Victor O, LOR. Vivo means living, and lore is from flora,
Hmm.
because living plants are what make up the product. So vivolor.com is where you can learn more. VIVOLOR.com. Um, and that's where you'll find Vivalor memory support and information on our supplement. It is the most comprehensive supplement on the market by a very wide margin. It's got 5 times more ingredients than the next closest product and 20 times more brain healthy nutrients than the top selling product. So again, we're using these ingredients that have the most scientific evidence and using a good amount of them, and more of the key ingredients that have shown that more has better results. But the ingredients are all safe and natural, and
That's good.
yeah, it's premium quality. It's made in the US in FDA certified, good manufacturing practice certified facilities. Um, and we test it to ensure that it doesn't have any contaminants and no heavy metals. So, like we were talking about how important DHA is,
Hmm.
but if you're getting it from your fish, you risk getting the mercury in it. And
Right.
so you're getting, we have we have 2,000 milligrams of DHA in
Hmm.
Viva memory support. So many people who are taking omega-3 supplementation are taking like 1,000 milligrams of
Yeah.
fish oil. I've had many customers go get their bottles. It might have 200 milligrams of DHA.
So your supplements are something that really offer the most nutrients. That's great to know. Thank you, Susan, for some very helpful information this hour. You're giving hope to so many people on how they can lower the risk or even prevent dementia. Listeners can purchase Susan's supplements on vivalore.com. That's spelled VIVOLOR.com. You can also reach out to Susan Gibson with any questions at 650-243-7135 or email her at sgibson@vivalor.com. You've been listening to the Truckers Network Radio Show on tncradio.live. I'm your host, Shelley Johnson. Stay tuned for more great programming on tncradio.live. Thank you for listening to another great interview on tncradio.live and the Truckers Network Radio Show. All of the material you hear on tncradio.live on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of tncradio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast of the Truckers Network Radio Show.